a former Boy Scout troop leader who had at one point been named Lone Oak's Man of the Year and was later convicted or pled guilty to multiple counts of rape of young boys, has died in prison. So if you're not familiar, I'm talking about Jack Walls. His actual name is Charles Walls, but he went by Jack. He was a Boy Scout leader who, over the course of over 20 years, preyed on boys. Not only did he use his position with Boy Scouts of America to get close to young boys, but he did things like outings, camping on his family's property, uh, other activities to get close to these boys and gain trust from their families and trust from the community. Everybody thought that this was just a pillar of the community, and behind all of their backs, he was grooming children, preying on children. Through all of these tactics, he introduced young boys to alcohol, weapons, and corn that he used to groom these kids, right? He earned, like I said, their parents' trust, earned the trust of kids, not just the ones that were in the Scouts, but other kids in the community. And unbelievably, he used this influence, he used this grooming and the essays that he was doing to these kids to convince one to murder his entire family. And I'm not just blaming him, he was actually charged with solicitation of murder. In fact, Jack Walls was sentenced in 1998. He pled guilty to 4 counts of grape, and he pled no contest to 1 count of grape. In exchange for those pleas of guilty and the one of no contest, the 2 counts of solicitation to commit murder were dropped. Now, who it was that he allegedly solicited the murder to, not allegedly, we know he did it, was the Hogan family. But there was another family that was murdered because Jack Walls convinced their child to murder them. And I'm say this, it sounds like, did he though? No, he did. He did do that because Heath Stocks, who was a child at the time, he testified actually at Jack Walls' sentencing hearing that he was 11 or 12 years old when Jack Walls first raped him. He said Jack Walls introduced him to corn and taught him how to fire at human targets. See, at this point in time in 1998, Heath Stocks had already murdered his entire family because Jack Walls convinced him to do it. So the judge allowed Heath Stocks to talk about the influence that Jack Walls had on him. And this is the kind of stuff that Heath Stocks said. So not only did he try to solicit the homicide of a whole other family, he actually had some responsibility in the homicide of the Stocks family. So if we just take this one at a time, in relation to Heath Stocks. So Heath Stocks' mother saw him being assaulted by Jack Walls in his bedroom when he was around 20 years old. She was murdered 9 days later. She saw that. She didn't know what to say because they had some fear of Jack Walls because they knew that he was viewed so highly in the community. So while Heath Stock's mom did not call the police, she did tell 2 people. She told her own mother and she told her preacher. Later on, Heath Stock's mother and sister approached him and asked him what was going on, and it was at that time that he admitted that he had been being abused by Jack Walls for years at that point. I mean, that would have been like, 8, 9 years that he had been abused at the hands of Jack Walls, and his family never had any idea. Allegedly, Jack Walls told Heath Stocks that he had to kill the quote-unquote problem, and that is what led to Heath Stocks murdering his family. He murdered his father, who he had always had a problem with, and he murdered his mom and his sister. Unfortunately for his part, I guess to some extent, unfortunately for his part, Heath Stocks is serving life without the possibility of parole in an Arkansas prison right now. And I say unfortunately, but not really unfortunately, because there was a family whose lives were lost. But I can only imagine how this man got into Heath Stock's head. He spent years with him. He spent years graping him. And a man graping a boy, you know, when he's in such a position of power and using that power to ensure trust from these boys, I can't imagine. That being said, let's talk about the other family. So Jack Walls allegedly, but not really, solicited or tried to solicit other Boy Scouts to murder the Hogan family. It seems that at some point Jack Walls tried to SA a child named Doug Hogan, and Doug told his family. And Doug's family tried to have something done about it, and Jack Walls lashed out at them. The police didn't really do anything to stop him. He was charged with like a misdemeanor, just general assault, but that was it, and that even didn't even go anywhere. Jack Walls tried to shut this family up by soliciting Boy Scouts to unalive the family. I mean, Jack Walls was so deep into the community that the pastor that Mrs. Stocks told about finding Jack Walls with her son, who was a mandated reporter, by the way, not only did he not tell anybody, but when they tried to get him to testify about Jack Walls, he was a hostile witness. The truth about the person that Jack Walls was only came to light, like actually came to light, when Jack Walls' nephew held him at gunpoint in front of the nephew's family, parents, and forced Jack Walls to confess to what he had been doing, because he had also been graping his own nephew. I believe that there was also another family that was made aware of what Jack Walls was doing, and that family contacted DHS, who then contacted authorities. And, this is all how the story of Jack Walls came out. Jack Walls' nephew, several years later, he unalived himself. He never was able to recover from what his own uncle had done to him during those formative years. Really, Jack Walls was sentenced to serve the rest of his life in prison, and he did. But I do think that there are things to learn from this case. The first thing is something that I've been saying for a long time. Predators are going to go where the children are. Wherever they can find children, especially where they can find children in positions where they are supposed to be respected, revered, that's where they're going to go. Teachers, clergy members, coaches on athletic teams. And I'm not saying that all of those people are predators, of course not, but I am saying that predators will go to those places to find their prey. Another thing that I think that we can learn is about how revered Jack Walls was in the community, so much so that the community was hesitant to speak out when they found out things. They were so defensive of Jack Walls because, well, this good man wouldn't do that. But we have to be better than that. We have to believe our kids, and we have to let, the case of Jack Walls teach us something.